Kia ora, good evening. An Invercargill man has been arrested and charged after crashing a vehicle at the Teretonga racetrack at around 10 a.m. this morning. Police say the 31-year-old has been charged with dangerous driving and unlawfully being in an enclosed area. It's alleged he'd been driving at speed and crashed the vehicle at the end of a straight, writing off his vehicle. Police say it's lucky the man was not injured. He's due to appear in the Invercargill District Court on Friday. Water quality in Southland could get a boost with farmers able to get a tax break for riparian planting following tax law changes. Riparian plantings by farmers can now be deducted as an operational expense rather than capital expenditure after amendments to the Income Tax Act. Environment Southland Senior Land Sustainability Officer Gary Morgan says Council will be encouraging farmers to do so.
The idea of having riparian planting along riverbanks means that those plants will help trap sediment and contaminants that run off the farmland and into the waterway. Those plants, depending on the species you use, can actually suck up nutrients. They can provide shelter for stock. They're good for the birds and bees. So it's a really good environmental thing to do, plant up the margins of waterways.
How many farmers do you expect to move on this?
Well, I would say I would say there's probably in the order of 50 or 60% of farms in the intensively farmed areas of Southland have some riparian fencing on their property. The thing to remember is you can't do the planting until you've got the fences up. So what we're really trying to do with farmers across Southland is to encourage stock exclusion from waterways, and that's a slow process because it's quite an expensive thing to do. But once you've got the fencing up, then you can get a riparian management plan underway. The Land Sustainability team at Environment Southland provide that free of charge to all farmers, and you can choose the appropriate species for the objective you've got in mind. And it might be bank stability, it might be shelter for stock.
Now you actually want government to take this a step further.
Well, I'd like to see, it's great, all big ups to the government for providing tax breaks for riparian planting, but as I just mentioned, it's the fencing that is the expensive part of riparian management, so it would be great to see the government giving a tax break for the cost of the fence materials and the erection of those fences.
What kind of environmental change could we see, and when could we see it as a result of this?
Well, we'll see if, as the riparian management, the fencing and the planting increases, we will see less contaminants running off land and into waterways. So that will cumulatively have a beneficial effect on water quality, particularly in the intensively farmed parts of Southland. It's a slow process, so we won't see huge gains in water quality overnight, but it's the direction we want people to be going in.
Some of the reasons given by Conservation Minister Nick Smith in declining a proposed tunnel linking Milford to Queenstown could also apply to another proposal, the Fiordland Link Experience. The Fiordland Link proposes a journey using catamaran, all-terrain vehicle and monorail between Queenstown and Te Anau Downs. A spokesman for the Wanaka-based company behind the proposal, Riverstone Holdings, says some of the minister's concerns could be applied to the monorail, but the company isn't worried and says any issues would be addressed with the Department of Conservation and the minister. However, the project is not without opposition. Mountains Club New Zealand President Robin McNeil says the original proposal had zero environmental impact, but has since been modified.
There's going to be about the size of the Bluff Reserve. It's going to get chopped down. There's a huge amounts of trees that get chopped down. Secondly, it goes through an area called the Kiwi Burn, where a lot of families go tramping and scouts go tramping. In fact, when the minister was there the other day, there was the Boys Brigade there. It's ideal family tramping country. People say, oh, well, we can go off into Fiordland, you don't need these places, but you do, because Fiordland's not somewhere you take a family or younger groups or beginner trampers. And then there's just the whole fact that it doesn't really make sense. I mean, I think anyone from a tourism industry point of view would say, how can you possibly make sense out of going from a boat to all-terrain vehicle, four-wheel drive to go up the Vaughan Valley, which is going to displace around the mountain track, of course, and then monorail, and then another bus ride. I won't save any time whatsoever, and it'll just be like herding cats trying to get the tourists through this. I mean, if it made sense, no, even then we wouldn't make it. Doesn't stack up.
But it could potentially offer perhaps 1 million tourists a year an alternative method of getting there.
Oh yeah, they can fly there now, to be really honest, and the cost is probably going to be a bit equivalent, I would think. I mean, look, you've got to ask why people come to New Zealand. Look, 10% of people come to New Zealand to go to Milford Sound. That's true, but they want a wilderness experience. They want something they can sort of look at in awe and wonder.
The Duchess of Cambridge has given birth to a baby boy, a future heir to the British throne. The birth date of Prince William and Kate's first offspring will be shared by around 167 New Zealand babies, according to Statistics New Zealand. Baby boys in New Zealand today might expect to live to 90 on average, 3 years less than baby girls born at this time. Tonight, the Southland Museum will be one of dozens of landmarks around the country that will be lit up in blue to celebrate the birth. The new prince is third in line to the throne. Stay with us after the break. Invercargill's iconic water tower remains off limits to the public, having been closed for 18 months. Welcome back. There have been no problems so far with retailers selling legal high products in Southland following the introduction of a new law around legal high products, according to police. The Psychoactive Substances Bill, which will place limitations on legal highs, became law on Thursday and governs products such as synthetic cannabis product K2. It provides restrictions on the availability and accessibility of legal high products, including sales to under 18-year-olds and no sales from dairies, grocery stores, petrol stations or anywhere alcohol is sold. Invercargill Police Sergeant Brock Davis says no problems have been reported and police are pleased with how dairies have complied with the new legislation. Police will continue to monitor the issue. The future of the oldest collection of 19th century buildings in New Zealand is unclear, with the buildings and land up for sale. The former Queen Victoria Hospital on D Street, owned by the Crown and managed by the Ministry of Health, has a Category 1 rating with the Historic Places Trust. Ministry of Health Chief Advisor Michael McCarthy says he doesn't see government as a long-term owner, and recently Ngāi Tahu turned down an ownership offer under the Claims Settlement Act. Mr McCarthy says if a buyer is not found in the near future, it'll be put out for tender in coming months. 18 months after it closed to the public, Invercargill's iconic water tower remains off limits due to possible earthquake risks. The historic building was closed as a precaution in February 2012 due to risks it would pose to public safety in an earthquake. A consultant was hired to give a detailed assessment on the structure and what strengthening work may be required for the 124-year-old building. City Council Waste Manager Alistair Murray says a report was received recently and will be put to councillors within the next few months, and it will be up to them as to what the next steps are. The Bluff oyster season will likely stay open until the end of August, with the industry about 90% through this year's catch. A total of 13.2 million oysters will be harvested this year after the industry elected to raise its voluntary reduced quota by 10%. The parasite Bonamia wiped out more than 1 billion oysters in Five O Strait in the early 2000s, but the beds are recovering well. Bluff Oyster Management Company spokesman Graham Wright says the season will probably last another 4 or 5 weeks. The season is open until the end of August or until the quota is filled. Southland children have been getting a taste of different sports today as part of the Southland ILT Holiday Sports Program. The program's been held at various locations around Invercargill this week. Around 200 children aged from 5 to 12 are taking part in a range of sports, with karate and orienteering among the most popular. Sports Southland says the program gives children the opportunity to try sports they may not have yet played. The event's been running for 5 years and is held each school holidays. The program was held in Te Anau, Riverton and Winton last week. Imaginations were running wild at a creative writing workshop in Invercargill today. Year 9 to 11 students this morning took part in a Dan Davin Literary Foundation Winter Writing School workshop. Run over 8 days. A series of workshops are being held in and around Invercargill, teaching a range of topics including poetry and short story writing. Aspiring writers are being mentored by authors Sue Wooten and James Brown. Around 40 people are taking part in the workshops, and Dan Devon Literary Foundation Coordinator Rebecca Arminston says the idea is to promote and support creative writing.
Since the mid-90s they've been doing that through holding student workshops for senior high school students. In the last few years we've developed that further, and we're also holding the workshops for junior high school students and for adults as well.
So in terms of the workshops, why broaden that out?
Well, we were getting some young high school kids wanting to come to some of the one-off adult workshops that we were holding. So this was like 14-year-olds coming to an adult workshop. We sort of realised that there was a need to cater for those children or students.
What do participants take away from the workshops?
Well, it's a really good opportunity to learn from somebody who is a published writer and also an experienced tutor. So this year we've had Sue Wooten from Dunedin here, and she's a poet, but she has also written short stories and a children's book, and in the process of writing a novel. And this week we've got James Brown here, and he's the poetry tutor at the Victoria University School of Modern Letters, and so he's an experienced poet and short story writer as well. So it's just an opportunity to get feedback on your work from somebody who knows the business, and also to learn. It's really important, like anything that you do, to improve your skills, and getting feedback from people like these tutors is a great way to do that.
Coming up in sport, Stags coach David Henderson. That's after the weather next from the news team. Good night.